Well, thanks for coming to Pyramind for this workshop. Um, I'm going to be showcasing a little bit of what I'm doing as a music producer. So, first of all, well, I don't know, like, is everyone familiar with what I do, or like, what's the percentage here that is just like people curious walking on the street? One? Oh, okay, okay. Oh, okay. Okay, so yeah, just well, basically, I'm gonna start with like a small introduction. It's just mostly to like kind of show like where I come from, and before I get into like more technical stuff, just to show like basically the history of somebody who gets into music, because I believe that you don't really just start discovering music when you're an adult. I think it comes really from a young age and everything, and you start getting really influence at an early age. So, sorry. So, yeah, my name is Frédéric Blais. That's my real name. The S is silent. I'm a French Canadian. Salut. So, French Canadian producer and DJ. I from the province of Quebec in East Canada. I was born in a city called Hull near Ottawa. Grew up in Quebec City and spent most of my adult life before I moved to San Francisco in Montreal. So Montreal is a great city if you haven't visited it. It's pretty close to the vibe of San Francisco without the sun and the wind. And I also lived briefly in Europe, in London, and yeah, been living in San Francisco for the last 4.5 years. Yeah, basically, I've always been interested in music since I'm a kid. My mom told me the only way to ever calm me down as a child was to play me some classical music, and then I would just shut up. So yeah, and then as soon as when I grew up, I spent countless hours listening to the radio, which now is like complete. It's a little bit lost. I still listen to a lot of radio. The jazz station here. But I mean, it's nowadays it's the internet, so everything is much more easy. Back then, I used to spend time just recording my favorite tracks on the radio by placing my recorder near the speaker. So these were my first experience to record to capture music, basically. So I would have to wait until my favorite song would come on. It could be like Human League, Keep Feeling Fascination, or Eddie Grant, Electric Avenue, something like that. Anything that had like synthesizers and vocoders, I always really liked. So I would just stay home while everyone's playing outside and just record the radio, basically. That, or I would just bang on the drums and sing what I thought. I thought I could speak English back then, but that's mostly gibberish. Um, Album I grew up listening to, Michael Jackson, Thriller, obviously. So Quincy Jones, definitely one of my favorite producers. Um, what else? Oh yeah, and the other album that I grew up listening to was Let's Dance by David Bowie, produced by Nile Rodgers from Chic. And by the way, he has a book out now called Le Freak, and it's really good, really good. Yeah, then I had some piano lessons as well growing up, but we didn't have a piano, so it was really hard. I couldn't really practice. And I was more interesting, I guess, in making sounds, rather than like playing an instrument. But it's always very good to play instruments. But when you're a kid, you don't necessarily realize that. So we were living in the suburbs, and we moved to the city of Quebec City. I was able to see a lot of live shows, a lot of festivals. Being exposed to a lot of live music was really good. And I got to do a radio show when I was about 12, I think. And I met some people at the radio station, a community radio station. Got to meet people there that I still know. I was listening to a radio show there every Friday, recording it, and I was the one calling all the time and asking what songs it were. It's where I first heard Kraftwerk and all this stuff. And I was really early at going out to clubs, so that explains a few things. I was underage in the underage clubs, so we have in Quebec, in Canada, it's 18 years old. So they have those clubs that are 14, 18. So I was 13 in those clubs. When I was 14, I was already moved to the big guys club, just there, with no money, just listening to music. So that's when I was in high school. Then, sorry. Well, I was in Quebec City. Yeah, I mean, I had a fake ID anyways. Put some liquid paper and trick my ear, and yeah, it's okay. And around that time, when you're, yeah, I think I was 15 or 16 when you're legally able to work. I was washing dishes basically to buy my first synthesizer, which was an Akai AX60, kind of like a poor man's version of a Juno 106. And a friend of mine gave me a Mattel toy drum machine, which, yeah, they still have those on eBay. And I had a Korg Pulley 800. And I would kind of do this thing where, like, there was no sync. So I would just play the drum machine and a sequence on the Pulley 800 and have one coming out of one headphone on the other headphone and just put those together on my speaker of my recorder and try to record something like that. And that was like my early attempts to do like house and acid house. It didn't really make sense, but you got to start somewhere. Then I was a huge fan of New Order, so I started some band projects. I just didn't want to make music on my own. I wanted to make music with a band. We basically were mimicking what they did in a video called Perfect Kiss, where they had the band playing in the studio. You could see what keyboard they play, what they play, and try to get the lyrics. But we did a couple of shows and they were horrible. So I was forced to sing basically, and you don't want that. Uh, I was forced to sing, and then the shows were just bad. So I decided to take more of a different approach and just make music on my own. We see people like Severed Heads or a lot of people in the early electronic industrial movement. They were making music on their own. I was like, how's that possible? That's really nice. So yeah, we were just well, at that point. I just kind of decided to make music on my own. A friend of mine had stolen a sequencer so we could like make music, and I kept that after we left the band. And I had to enter each and every note of a sequence one by one. It was very painful. So if I did a full song, I had to enter the note with the note value and the silence if there was one. And after, when the track was done, if there was a mistake, I had to redo the whole thing. It was horrible, but again, that's how you learn. We're years away from Ableton and everything. Um, so yeah, so basically that led me to make music on my own. Early '90s, a lot of big explosion in electronic music. It was like house, techno, ambient, jungle, drum and bass, acid jazz, progressive house, trance. All this music was coming. A lot of music were coming from England at the time, and I was really into all this kind of music. So I was basically making all these things, or an attempt to make all these things. So if you have any questions about my name now, this is why the everything comes from. So I was doing shows in basically mostly in raves and some clubs. I had this one here that I still have, the SH101, a TR909 that I sold stupidly. Both of them I had for I got for $300 back in the days. And yeah, that was interesting. That was before I started DJing, and I was just like having like a tape deck playing like the background of my music, and then I would just jam with this thing and the TR909. And I got to open for a guy that I didn't know back then in Montreal called Sasha. He was still very new, and that was kind of like a highlight at the time. Yeah. Oh yeah, I gotta also say one thing is that since I started to make like my first tracks, I was sending tapes all the time, all the time, all the time. So Warp Record was one of my favorite label at the time. So I would send the music, and I would send just basically like everyone music, just being that annoying kid. So I was at the post office all the time. It was very painful back then to do that. Never really got anywhere with that at that point, but eventually. And so I would send tapes also to promoters in Montreal and Toronto, and then that's how I got the gig for Sasha. And so around 95, I think. Well, I started DJing a little bit before that. And so I was DJing in Montreal with a very, very limited record collection. Back then, it was really hard to get the right records. And being in Quebec City, it's really far from everything. So you'd have to drive to Montreal or to Toronto, which was 10 hours drive, and get some records. So you get like your limited record collection, borrow some records from other people. And in '95, actually, I went to Montreal to see The Orb, and I met the DJ from San Francisco called John Howard. I don't know if you guys know him. He's kind of a legend here, definitely. And spent some time with him over there. I could barely speak any English back then. And I kind of understood him saying, "You can come and stay with me if you want." So I called him, and I did visited San Francisco the first time in '95. Stayed at his flat on Haight-Ashbury, played a couple of shows. My first show here was at Mission Rock. Before it was like kind of just one side back then. Anyways, it was very different. And just basically fell in love with the city, met a lot of people I still know today, Julius Babb, JJ, Mark Farina, Solar, Galen, and so on. A lot of these people I met back then. And San Francisco kind of left a big imprint for me, like culturally, and just everything I really like about it. The way it moves through me, the way it soothes me so soothing. So '95, after that, I decided to move to Montreal, start working at Inbeat Record, which was like a big, big thing. It was basically the headquarters for all the DJ junkies of the city. It was the best place to be. Basically, you arrive in a city and you know, the best place. They had in stores. So basically, when artists would come to the town, you know, they'll have like in stores with like Roger Sanchez, Masters at Work, Basement Jacks. So all these people were like coming and hanging out on a Friday and doing in stores. So I got to meet some of these people and getting exposed to a lot of great music. '96, first Winter Music Conference, which back then was really just very much industry. It wasn't like now, like it wasn't like a big spring break fest, completely different. And it was very fun. I saw New York and Soul live there, Masters at Work, Roy Ayers in India. And let's move on a little bit quicker. So '97 started to have some residencies, some key residencies in Montreal, in clubs there. Start to release music on record labels in England and everywhere. In '97, started a long relationship with a label that I worked with for many years called 2020 Vision. I went there, did some gigs there, and then toured in Europe. 1999, I moved to London to finish my first album called Under the Sun, and just kept. I did 2 albums for them, many remixes, many singles. In the meantime, I was working for other labels and touring and everything, but they were kind of my base at the time. And eventually, let's move on to the 2000s. I started working with Home Records as well as while we're still working with 2020. And 2005, I started my own label, Lazy Days Recordings, that I'm promoting right there. And about 4 years ago, I moved to San Francisco, finished my last album here called Lost Together, which I'm going to show you a track now. I was working out of Molten Studio on Polk Street, where our friend Chris Lum, who also works here, that's his spot. And I don't know what else to say. I think that's that's quite a lot. If you guys have any questions or anything. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, stereo, Sona, Playground, Jinxie, all kinds. Yeah, pretty much all of them. So any questions or no? So I just, I didn't want to be too boring. Just wanted to show that, basically music has been my life for a very long time. So,
What kind of classical music did you listen to as a kid?
what kind of classical?
Yeah,
Oh, I couldn't tell you that. It was
That violinist Jean Conte, the
uh,
French violinist.
no. I mean, it was probably just the classics like Beethoven and Chopin and all this stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, there we have this. Yeah, so basically, yeah, all I wanted to say is, yeah, definitely like music, runs deep. Not necessarily in my family. My mom is not necessarily very musical, but it's just something that I've always been interested in. So, are you guys all are you all producing music, or you want to be producing, or any one of you like releasing stuff right now? Yeah, this guy too. This is my friend Alvaro, by the way. I collaborate with him on some stuff, so he's one of my collaborators in San Francisco. S yeah.
I was wondering if your family supported you in music growing up as you became an adult, or if that played into anything in your success, you feel like?
Yeah, well, it was just my mom, and basically, as long as I was happy, she was happy. So that's how it worked. She didn't really understand it at first. Neither did I. Too. I tried to apply to universities and things like that, but there was I got big rejections, and that just led me to keep focusing on the plan A instead of plan B. So yeah, when you really want something, I think you really have to go and get it. So yeah, I'll show you. I have quite a few tracks. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to go through all of them. Starting with an original. This is this one is the most complete session that I brought. They're not full session because I couldn't bring my tower and everything. So they're stems. But this one, I really put a lot of the stems there, so I didn't really group that many things. So because I want to show you guys how I build my track and how like the little details will come in nicely. Sometimes a lot of things you don't hear, they're just there and they create something. They make a difference in the sound. So the track is called Merciless. It was from my last studio album called Us Together. So I'll play a little bit here. Sorry, I don't have a fade out button here, so I'm gonna have to stop. So yeah, this was the most successful song of my latest album, and it wasn't really. We didn't really know that it was going to be that one. It's always that special one that people kind of like. It was really, and it's still really popular in South Africa for some reason. It really captures people's imagination. So yeah, basically, I'm gonna explain a few things. Like first of all, something about workflow. um, I think it's very important to have, like, I've seen sessions before that are like, not joking, 100 tracks, all kinds of like weird edits, and the tracks are not named. And I mean, I know some people can work like that. I can't, and I don't think it's very the best way. So I have a system. Everyone can have their own system. um, I color code my parts. So for me right now, I know, like, I'm seeing blue, this is drums. I know instantly. Pink is vocals. Brown, bass or some sort of bass element. Orange, keys. Yellow, strings or pads. Actually, this one is not. Sorry, yeah. And if I have some effects and stuff like that, it will be kind of like uh, blue, but lighter blue. So I think it really helps to have the color codes. I mean, do you guys do that? Any one of you do that, or yeah? I think it helps. I mean, it's free. It's not complicated, and it really helps a lot in the workflow. Do you guys do a lot of bounce too? Like, for example, like if you have like I don't know, like four hi-hats pattern, like, to group them. I don't know if you guys do that. Yeah, that helps a lot too. That helps free up some of the computer's resources, but it also helps free up your mind and your screen. So it becomes a lot. Because this session, if you see the original of this session before I did this just for this class, it's much more like, small bits and this and that. It's not as nice. So yeah. Oh, microphone. There you go. He ran with the microphone. Oh, okay.
Do you ever have like different sessions for one song for
That
any reason?
no, that's a good question. What I'll do is usually, like, if I do a dub of this, I do this, and then I'll do this over there, for example. I do that, and then I go, like, just say like I know that it's gonna be an instrumental. Boom, this is my instrumental. I keep it like that in the session because the reason is that if I change something in the mix, um, I don't want to have to go back and guess it on the other session or whatever. So I always keep one session. Sometimes I'll have up to like 3 or 4 different versions. And sometimes I know, okay, for example, in the second mix, I do not want to be using this main chord. So I erase it. And I erase the vocals or whatever. And sometimes I just kind of redo an arrangement, but at least I have the same. It's like back in the days when they had the big board, and they have those tapes that they put to say kick, snare, and everything, on there. And they would keep those tapes in their studio. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that, but keep all those tapes, these slides. That was really really difficult just to kind of be able to recall a mix. So now on this, it's much easier. But yeah, to keep like the mix constant, that's what I will do. The way it moves through me, the way it soothes me so soothing, it's so soothing. So what was I saying just before that with that? Yeah, well, just keep, okay, just about the workflow. Yeah, the bounce, and I think it's very important. It's very, nice to just kind of collect stuff together. And also, like, when you free space on your computer, I believe that it kind of sounds better, but I'm not sure about that. Because it feels like the computer is not working as hard. And again, it makes more space. It's just easier to arrange. So So on this particular track, oh yeah, also, you guys use markers at all? I don't have markers on here. Sometimes I use that because it's nice to just, often our music is very much structured into like 8 or 16 bars, and I think, sometimes it's nice to see like, oh, intro here. It's easy to just go back to the intro, and you see like kind of how your track is structured, and if there's any problems or how to go back to certain things. Um, so what I wanted to show in this is like a little bit of like the little elements. So let's start with the drums. So we got our very original 4/4 kick. And this is what kind of started the track. Actually, this one is from the my MPC 3000. So it's just a pure dirty loop. Just a shaker. So when I'm talking about little elements, I'm talking about that little Latin percussion, for example, that comes in here. Also, other things that can be really nice is this thing. You guys hear that? A little static thing. I mean, you can hear it while the track is playing, but it's kind of part of it's a part of like the whole thing. What else do I have? So I have different things coming at different places. Like the shaker comes in at the end. Where is it here? It's actually very low in the mix. And I even have like this, what I call a Christmas bell coming towards the end. And that's another thing too. Just all little things that can add this, that can make the sound a little bit richer. Overall, makes the mix richer. These are little effects. Oh yeah, there's another hidden sound here. This one you hear, just the chord thing. That's another one that you don't really hear in the song, but it just when you take it out, something is kind of missing. And also like the heartbeat towards the end. So let's play this just all of it so you can kind of hear him. So if we take out things like the bells, for example, and the analog, all of a sudden it's kind of something is missing. It feel a little bit like it's kind of like a painting or photography where like, first thing you'll see a tree and a house, for example. But then as much as, the more you look at it, then you'll see all those little details. These things, the main things are in focus and the rest of the stuff is out of focus. And I think this is what also brings like a depth to your mix. So you've got your stereo field, obviously, but you also have your depth, so where you place sounds in the mix, so if you for example, those bells are kind of like far, like in the field, in the back of the house, but they're part of the same image, so that's why I like to do that, though, sometimes, I mean, some people don't, and that's fine. It just depends. It's more like a matter of style and taste. You guys work a lot with vocalists? Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah.
I was just going to ask, like, in Deep House, do you find that there's any structure of a track that you try to follow in your own work, or?
Well, that's a good question. I try not to, but you do. There's certain things that just work, and that's also something that I'd put out so we can talk about it now. structures, I mean, I'm sure like the structures is usually like a lot of people have a hard time with it. Am I right? Or yeah. So you have to get out of the loop. Basically, it's very easy to do. Like, it's really nice 8 or 16 bar loop, even 32. But to get stuck in it and then pile it up, pile it up, pile it up. Instead of going like this, think like this. When you structure a song. So think you're telling a story instead of like if you're building your track vertical, then it's almost like everybody's like talking at the same time, and there's no story there. And I'm sure you guys get bored as much as I do when you're in a loop. You get bored, you get tired of it, and you just keep adding things, and it doesn't really make sense because you're not telling the story. So when you're starting a track, okay, well, start with a basic structure. So for example, build your loop not on 8 but on 16 or 32. Add little things here and there, like, to make it a little bit interesting. So for example, maybe, I don't know, it might be that at the end of your 32 you have a kick leaving, and then you have a crash or an effect on the one. You can use all kinds of things, little effects that comes in. If you work with vocal, I love working with vocals because you can extract so many things out of it. You can whispers like are your best friends there, and I'll show you. You can use these little things just to, if your loop is really very simple, just adding those little elements will make it more interesting. So structure-wise, okay, you were saying if I try to do the same thing, I try not to, but I end up doing the same thing. Basically, a lot of times, well, it starts. There's certain things you gotta, you make your music for the DJs, so you want to have a basic kind of rule for people. You don't want to be completely like, you don't like just like you don't start a song with a guitar solo. Well, I don't know, most songs, anyways. On the radio, the same thing with DJing. You don't start the song with everything. It's kind of like a construction and deconstruction often. But then there's no rules after that. You can do whatever you want. So if you're stuck also with structures, and if it's the hardest thing for you, you take someone else's song that you really like, how it feels in a club, and you just copy it. There's no problem with that. You're not, really copying someone. You're just trying to learn something. From that, you learn so much. I have some friends who do that actually, and they really just take someone's track and they put it like in Ableton under their arrangement, and they just go through that. And it doesn't mean that their track is gonna sound like the other person. It's just that they like this. So I find that there's often two breakdowns in tracks, but not always. And I quite like when there is not, but it often helps. And like there's usually the beginning, the intro, and then like I said, there you got a construction, then you got a deconstruction, and then there's all kinds of things you can play with. Like for example, what do you call this? Well, I forget now. But anyways, just building the tension. Yeah, you build the tension, and then you can build the tension all the way to 65, and then at 65, boom, it goes down. It's just like drums and bass, and then it creates this little release, tension release. That's it. So that's for structure. So do a lot of you guys work with vocals or vocalists? So I love working with vocalists, and I love remixing vocals because there's so many things you can do with it. So on this session, I have a lot of vocal tracks. So I have my full thing here.
Merciless, so merciless through me, the way it soothes me so.
Then if I get a falsetto here,
It's so soothing.
I have little bits that I added, that I
At the
recorded.
same time, the way it flows, and it's growing through my bones.
And then I've got my whispers.
Oh yeah, like a cold damn wind. It's so sinful, sinful.
Okay. So you get the idea. If you have a singer, I'm gonna sound bad, but make them work. You know, like good singers, they love to do parts and everything. You don't have to use those, but they're nice. They're nice to use. Like I have all kinds of things in there again, like kind of like hidden things. So what is this? I
No
don't even know.
feeling,
I don't know what is this extra vocal.
no feelings.
That's just like one that has like some delay on it. And then I have this thing called reverse vocal, which is, let's see, what is this? So these are just little bits of like reverse vocal that just kind of give some sort of they can give like some sort of like glue with the rest of the vocal. And then I have another one that's called vocal dub. And which one is that one? That's probably a lot of delays and stuff. Oh no,